Lizzie, senior government figures are preparing to hand over all their messages with Peter Mandelson during his time as US ambassador. Such a big story, this, isn't it? It comes at the end of a hugely challenging week for the Prime Minister. Yesterday, he apologised to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and said he was sorry both for believing Mandelson and for appointing him in the first place. A very, very difficult 24 hours for Keir Starmer. Here he is.
The victims of Epstein have lived with trauma that most of us can barely comprehend. And they've had to relive it again and again. They have seen accountability delayed and too often denied. To them, I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him.
Much of the frantic commentary around the Epstein files has centred on the political consequences for Starmer's leadership, for Mandelson's peerage, etc. But hang on, one question keeps surfacing. Are we talking enough about the women and girls abused by Epstein? Are they getting pushed to the margins? Yesterday we received a message from Gabby, a listener from Cardiff, and she made this point.
It is outrageous that the reason for parliamentary fury is about passing secrets rather than the absolute scandal at the very, very heart of this. The abuse, rape and torture of so many girls and young women. This should have been enough a long, long time ago to cause horror and rage. But the truth is, the reason for this whole situation is that the women and girls do not matter to men in power. They simply don't matter enough. That's the scandal.
It is a powerful point. It's easy for the victims at the heart of this story to be obscured. The files' revelations are often repurposed, shifting the focus away from the women's experiences and towards political point scoring. So I'd love your thoughts on whether the victims' voices are being drowned out here. If you are a survivor of sexual abuse yourself, do you feel like the voices of survivors have been eclipsed by all of the drama surrounding this? Just sort of spread a cloud of smoke around it. Get in touch. vine@bbc.co.uk is the email. Please include your phone number. Or you can text us 88291, or you can WhatsApp us 08000 288 291. We'll speak in a moment to Lucy Duckworth, who's policy lead for the Survivors Trust. But first, Nikki Hodgson, journalist and author, you're concerned about this.
I really am. I mean, it was one thing for Starmer to give that apology, but that's pretty much the only decent public apology there's been about this relating to the victims. What really troubles me is that we know, even the way that the US Justice Department disseminated the documents, lots of victims were named. Why is it that when you go through the files, you'll see redacted names all over the place, people that are obviously complicit in some of Epstein's crimes, but victims, again, are sacrificed on the altar? And just the sheer fact that we are not concentrating on the sexual abuse and trafficking, which is at the heart of the story, is proof that misogyny is well and alive in 2026. And, you know, the worst thing is that the discussions at the top and people saying, oh, it wasn't nothing to do with me, I didn't see it, etc., it's people just wiping their hands and trying to distance themselves rather than trying to look at themselves and look at what role they played and whether they should have been paying more attention.
Yeah, I suppose part of the problem of publicising what happened to the victims is that for totally understandable reasons, a lot of people who are victims do not want to appear in public to talk about it because it just doubles down the trauma, doesn't it? And that creates a problem with us feeling their pain.
Yes, it does. But do you know what? That's being human. And the reason you feel other people's pain is so that you don't inflict it. That's how it works. And I'm not saying people should be soaking themselves in it 24 hours a day, but everybody should be very aware and searching out stories about the survivors and what they endured, so that we can challenge sexual abuse, which is a massive problem. We sweep it under the carpet. We pretend that it's something that happens far away from us. It isn't. It's happening on every street in Britain. And we have to stamp it out.
And when the offences came to light initially, it was actually one 14-year-old girl whose mother said, wait, something in that, I don't like what's happening to my daughter in that house. And she got the police involved. And you'll know the story, Nikki. It went through the courts, but in the most ham-fisted way. And he was just barely wrapped on the knuckles. He was allowed to spend some of his sentence at home. He almost didn't have to appear in court in the way that most defendants would. He just kind of wandered in like he was free that afternoon. So all of that was a bad place to start, wasn't it? Because it suggested that he, Epstein, was somehow able to purchase a different kind of justice.
Absolutely. And, you know, there won't be justice for the victims. There won't be justice for the victims unless hundreds of people are taken to court and really grilled about what they did know and what they did and didn't do. And I think it's interesting that it was a woman, a mother, that spotted that something was amiss, because I think in this story, too many powerful men have just turned a blind eye or chose to forget details on purpose. And I just want to send a message out to men listening, Jeremy. You know, I have a wonderful husband, a wonderful brother. I have lots of gorgeous men in my life. But it is men that listen to other men. And if you hear other men talking degradingly about women, or, you know, you think someone's doing something that's untoward, please say something, because you're the people that can change this.
Thank you very much indeed, Nikki Hodgson, journalist and author. Let's speak then to Lucy Duckworth of the Survivors Trust. We have to keep orienting ourselves back to the victims in this story, Lucy.
We certainly do. And, you know, I completely agree with what Nikki was saying there, just about when she was talking about the victim's story and the victim's narrative. I'd like to add as well that I think one of the reasons that many people don't want to come forward is because victim blaming is so rife in this country. And it's great that we're getting apologies, but the way we view victims is a massive barrier to disclosure. And that's not going to change until we as a society properly look and understand the prevalence. You know, as Nick said, it's happening on every single street in this country. And it was very encouraging to hear the Prime Minister make such a strong apology. However, he was talking in the past tense. And we know that there is one child who experiences sexual abuse every single minute in this country. That's 500,000 children a year. And an adult rape is reported every 11 minutes. These are figures that we cannot ignore, and we should be turning our entire systems upside down to change, and we're not, and that's very frustrating.
Yeah, but if someone is listening to you and thinking, well, no, I don't agree, they might say, well, look at Andrew. He's been ruined. He's virtually now buried alive at Sandringham. He will never work. He won't party. He probably won't ride a horse again. He's lost his titles, his status. He's lost everything. That suggests that something here works, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm certainly not going to discuss the consequences on the men who inflict this pain on other people when we aren't really talking about the support or the pain that is inflicted on the victims and survivors. We don't have adequate funding for the life-saving services that they need. Very often victims of sexual abuse refer to themselves as survivors, and that's because the reality is that not all people do survive from this crime. The trauma and the impact is so great that it takes many lives every single week, and we really need to fully understand this isn't something about this that can easily be fixed with a few therapy sessions. This is a lifelong sentence that the victim is with, and so whatever the consequences to the perpetrators are in complete insignificance and must be treated completely separately to the support that survivors need. We think there's around 14 million adult survivors of sexual abuse in this country. These are just staggering figures, and yet there's nowhere for them to go that's adequately funded with proper specialist support. We know that our agencies at the Survivors Trust do provide that support, and there is somewhere that people can go. They mustn't feel they are alone on this, but it needs to be better funded, and the government need to be doing much more in terms of prevention and response rather than just making really encouraging statements. We need action as well.
Thank you so much. Lucy Duckworth, Policy Lead for the Survivors Trust. We're asking whether somehow the whole centre of gravity in the Epstein story is all about the men and not about the victims.